you the book of what's the history one that you I think published a year ago? Has it been a
Yeah,
year?
about a
I
year.
think it has been a year. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, there is a section, although I haven't been able to go through the book because I don't have it right now. There was a section on the history of algebra, I think, where
hmm
you do cover about we do talk about abstract algebra and the history. Do you feel like writing that textbook was also an illuminating experience for you in the sense that you learned about the motivations of the subjects that you learned during your undergraduate and graduate days? Like you had a better feeling for why certain definitions in reanalysis are the way they are, and why certain objects in abstract algebra are important or given importance, like the normal subgroup or the group in general. The definition seems very arbitrary. Did you feel like writing that book really sharpened your, I don't know, motivations for why certain mathematical objects are important, or not quite?
Yes, absolutely. Um, for one, writing the book is how I learned the material. I have never taken a math history course. My university did not
Yeah.
offer it. My undergrad university didn't offer it. When I was a graduate student, there was an undergrad course. I don't think it was regularly offered, maybe every once a year, maybe even less than that. Um, and I never like TA'd it or anything. So this was entirely a like but I've always been interested in it. Like I want to know this stuff. So, I mean, this book took forever to write because I had to read. I mean, the amount of time I spent reading in order to write was crazy. I mean, like it's like okay, I need to write this section. Okay, well, I need to read this book in order to write this section. So, I mean, it
Yeah,
was
yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
so yeah. So I learned a lot, and at the time I was just like I loved it. I was obsessed with it. By the end, if I'm being honest, I was a little burnt out. I was like, okay, this has been so much stuff, and this book is huge, and I just need to stop this. Um, but but yeah, I mean, learning history I think is a really good way to understand things exactly. I like the way you said it because in my view, it's a book like this should be read at the end of your undergrad. Don't read it first. Like, okay, this is where
Uh,
I'm going to understand. No, no, no. I think, like what you said, I think if you understand the theory first, you're going to appreciate the history much more than like, okay, here's the history of, like you mentioned a group. Yeah, it took a long time to settle on the definition of a group, and many people contributed to it. Like half a dozen made like important contributions to the definition of a group. It's really weird to say because the definition of group is
mhm.
just like, here are like four axioms. Like you can just, how could six people contribute to the four axioms? Well, it's because, it's a big question of what the axiom should be. You want to have them be you don't want to have too many axioms, and in which case it's kind of okay, we're only talking about these two different things, right? If you have too few axioms, okay, you're talking about, then here are 20 interesting things that are groups, but we can't prove anything because they're not strong enough. So, there's a tug and pull to deciding on these things. And, a typical group theory class, day one, here are the axioms. Okay, as if they were just handed down to mathematicians, and
Mhm,
and then
mhm.
we just started proving things. When that's not the history. The history is it takes time and struggle to try to figure out, to settle on it, and especially in a time where, you know, today everything is like, day one of this class, look at these axioms. Day one of this class, also look at these other axioms. And But thinking axiomatically, is in some ways a relatively new part of math. At the same
Yeah,
time,
yeah.
it's also very old. Like Euclid, like the first like book math proof-based math book was Euclid Elements, and he starts off with axioms. So it's not like it's also very old, but like caring about it to the extent that we do today,
Mhm.
is new. And a lot of the axiomatic math that we study in undergrad is only 1 to 200 years old. Relatively new in the big arc of math history. Um, so yeah,
Mhm.
I think. But once you know the material, it means even more. So yeah, I
Mhm.
think I certainly had a new appreciation for so much of the material, um, and I hope readers do too.
Yeah, I'm curious. So, the reanalysis book that you wrote, it started off as a course that you were teaching, and you were writing lecture notes for that course, and then you realized, oh, I can turn this into a textbook.
Mhm.
Um, I feel like in the case of math history, it was kind of the opposite. You had interest in math history already, and you wanted to write a book on it, and then you opted to teach a math history course. Is that how it happened?
Yeah. So I think, yeah. So the first time, so the second book was proofs, and that was more what you're saying. Like, I definitely like, okay, I know how to prove things by induction, but I want to write a book on it. I have some ideas to how to, make it a more interesting book than the other ones. And I just sat down and sort of, okay, I want to write the book. So therefore, I should teach the course. Please sign me up for the course. So the proofs book, I think, is more closely to that. The history book, I think, is kind of like that. The first time I taught the course, I hadn't decided yet whether I wanted to write a book. I just wanted, it was a possibility because I'd already written two, but it was, or I guess at that point it was only written one. But yeah, but I was yeah, but I didn't know for sure because there was so much I didn't know. So I taught the class like 6 or 7 times while writing the book. And every time I taught the class, it was substantially different than the previous time because I learned so much more since the
Mhm.
previous time. Um, and probably by the time I taught the class a couple times, at that point, I was like, okay, eventually I want this to be a book, but but it's nowhere near ready. I mean, I was still, there's no way I don't know enough, and there's so much more that I want to do. So yeah, it was going to be a lot more work. But yeah, so pretty soon it was at least an idea that I wanted to turn into a book, but not immediately, I want to say.
Mhm. Was one of the main challenges the amount of information on a subject, like what to include and what not to include? Was it sifting through all the history and making sure that, okay, this person actually contributed this, I'm not just giving credit to someone because pop culture says they made this up? Or like, what were the main challenges with the history book?
Uh, yeah, there are many challenges. Those are definitely two of them. To your first one, yeah, there is, if it's, I want to write a book on real analysis.
Hmm.
Basically, I know, I mean, without even, on day one, I could just pick up 5 other real analysis books, and they all cover basically the same thing, right? It's like, okay, I'm going to do it differently and hopefully better, but
Hmm.
not. The content is basically already there. Um, and especially when it builds on each other, it's like, okay, if by the end of the course I want to discuss integrals, well, okay, here is the basically the fastest route to get there, and everyone basically follows the fastest route, and yeah, so make some changes, but nothing dramatic. Similar with proofs. With history, there's no like this is the route to. First of all, where do you want to get to? Some history books stop at
Yeah, yeah.
calculus. Some try to do modern math. Um, so what are you going to cover? How are you going to cover it? I mean, yeah, it was a big challenge, and it evolved over the course of the book. What I decided to focus on. So yeah, that was definitely one of the big challenges. Um, yeah, in the end, I decided to basically focus on math that an undergrad would see, or at least potentially see. So,
Hmm.
a lot of history books focus on a lot of modern theory, right? Here's a whole chapter on algebraic number theory. Okay, well, no undergrads know algebraic number theory. Now, is it important to modern math? Sure, right? I mean, if you want to do research today and you want to list out the top 15 areas of math, yeah, it might be one of them, right? But it's not. But undergrads wouldn't have a good appreciation for it.
Hmm.
So I want to include maybe a blurb, maybe a paragraph, but nothing substantial. So yeah, the focus of the book is mostly building up to all the math that undergrads see. So, it starts with numbers. So undergrads saw that back when they were little kids. Numbers,
Hopefully, yeah.
hopefully, arithmetic, some basic methods of proof. Then getting into the beginnings of proofs, Euclidean, Euclid's math, geometry, Euclidean geometry, axiomatic math, leading towards, and then it sort of went subject by subject, number theory,
Hmm.
algebra, calculus, real analysis, topology, combinatorics. So these are sort of the main areas. And along the way, I talk about linear algebra and differential equations and stuff. But yeah, you have to focus. I mean, there's so much out there. You can't just say, yeah, I'm going to cover it all. I mean, my book's 700 pages and it doesn't cover it all. So you have to make choices, and that's challenging to make choices. But focusing on undergraduate math was sort of a good way to to just automatically cut it down to a reasonable quantity.
Uh-huh.